past few months, I've introduced you to the many new polishing abrasive accessories available from Foredom. Many of you asked for assortment kits. We've heard and we have delivered. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the new Foredom by Oro Sandpaper Roll assortments, and I'm going to show you how I use them to get that highly desirable mirror finish on the inside of your ring. One of the more difficult things to do in jewelry making. Each of the assortments feature 3/32 inch shanks, which is a 2.35 millimeters. They each are 1 inch by 10 inches of a premium quality wet dry sandpaper. They should only be run at about 5,000 RPM maximum. The abrasives are marked on the rolls, and there are 3 assorted papers to choose from. There are 6 total assortments, so with just a few variations. So let's take a look at those now. The first line is the Sia line, featuring papers made in Switzerland. This is for fine finishing, flattening of fillers, producing a matte finish on lacquers prior to the final lacquering, removing paint runs or that orange peel effect, and dust inclusions. It has a durable backing for wet or dry sanding of harder sanding surfaces. There are 2 assortment packs. The first, the AK-12-149, has 4 of the 240 grit, 4 400, 2 600, 1 1000, and 1 2000 grit. The second kit, the AK-12-153, features the semi-friable aluminum oxide, 1 each in 180, 240, 280, 320, 400, 600, 800, 1000, and 1200. Silicon carbide will include the 1500, 2000, and 2500. So you can see we go up pretty high. Next up, we have the Stark Matador papers that are made in Germany. This paper features a premium resin-bonded durable abrasives that resist loading and will provide an excellent grain retention. It works great on metal, fiberglass, glass, wood, and auto body applications, and especially well on solid surfaces. The anti-clogging properties provide better sanding and a cleaner, safer work environment. There again are 2 assortment packs. The AK-12-148 features 4 each of the 220, 400 grits and 2 each of 600 grit, 1 each of the 1000 and 2000 grit. The AK-12-152 includes 1 each of the following grits: 220, 240, 280, 320, 400, 600, 800, 1000, 1500, 2000, 2500, and finally 3000 for that lovely finish. And finally, we have the Kocs papers that are made in Japan. These papers are wonderful for jewelry and metals, mold polishing, electronics, instrument, and furniture polishing. They feature a durable backing with an aluminum oxide grain for wet dry sanding of harder surfaces. Once again, there are 2 assortment packs. The AK-12-151 features 4 each of the 240 and 400, 2 of the 600, and 1 each of 1000 and 2000 grits. The second is the AK-12-154, and it also includes 1 each of 180, 220, 240, 320, 400, 600, 800, 1000, 1200, 1500, and finally 2000. So why do we have 2 different assortment kits for each of these different items? Well, there's a couple different thoughts on that. One, if you don't actually know where to start or what you're going to be using, I highly suggest the kit that has 1 each of the different grits. That way, as you begin to use those, you will figure out which ones you are using more of, and then you can go back and order just those. The second one we have populated with the items that we think you are going to use most based on the usage of other artists just like you. Now here in my studio, while I use all of the assortments, depending on what I'm working on, I lean more towards the Stark Matador and the Kocs papers, as they do really well with the metals that I use when I make my jewelry. So in the case of this example, here I have a sterling silver ring. This ring gets worn all the time, so it definitely needs to have a little bit of touch up. So let's take a look and see how we're going to take the inside of this ring, which currently has a fairly matte finish, and make that baby shine. Now, anytime you work with a micromotor or a flex shaft or any of these types of accessories, safety first. Make sure you're wearing your safety goggles, a mask, and if you happen to have long hair, make sure you take the time to pull that back. Now in this case, I have a sterling silver ring. Like I said, this gets worn quite a bit, so there's a little bit of wear on that. I'm going to start off with something that's a little grittier. So here I'm starting off with about a 320. So what I want to do is get this and support my ring on my bench pin, and I'm just going to work the inside of my ring. Now you want to make sure that you don't go over 5,000 RPM on these. And on this ring, I'm just going to do the inside. So I want to do one side, flip it over, and just make sure that I have even strokes that I'm using to really clean it up on the inside of this ring. Once I'm happy that everything looks fairly even and smooth, I will progress to the next finer grit. So I'll move down to the next grit, which is about 400, and I'm just going to work my way through each of these different grits. As I progress into finer and finer, I should start to see this mirror polish coming out. Now in this case, I'm going to finish off with a 3000 grit, and that will be the last of the sandpapers for me. And at this point, I will have a nice pre-polish. Now, while we might be tempted to leave it at this stage, because you can see how beautiful that is, I find that if I hit this with a cotton buff with a little bit of platinum white or some other finishing compound, that's really going to do the trick, and we will be left with a beautiful mirror finish. And really, it just does not get much better than that. Now, one other thing that it is important to note and was not necessarily shown here in the steps of the video is in between each grit movement, you really should take the time to go and wash that piece of jewelry or metal or whatever it is that you're working on, because there is a possibility of some of those previous grits being left. And if you have that, they are larger than the next particle size down, and that can impede having a very high finish. Now, after we're done working with one of these and we've used it beyond its capabilities, all we need to do is simply come in and tear this off like that, and we are left with a new roll ready to go. So I hope this helps answer some of the questions you may have on using the sandpaper rolls. I love them in my studio, and I'm sure you're going to like them in yours too. As always, if you have any questions, just be sure to drop us a line at foredom.net, or you can leave them down here in the comments in the video. These are available now at any of the places that sell Foredom.